Welcome to the Confident Motherhood Podcast. I'm your host, Anne, mama of two, holistic pregnancy and pediatric sleep consultant, and the founder of Empowered Decisions. In our seasons together, I'm here to help you step into your inner confidence from pregnancy to motherhood. Whether you are preparing to meet your baby or integrating into new mom life, this is a safe space with education and support for your journey. Join me as we raise the vibe of our motherhood collective. Welcome back to the Confident Motherhood Podcast. Today, we're talking about what you need to know to actually bring your unmedicated birth to life. We're going to address challenges of navigating this decision that's not necessarily the norm and preparing within a system that encourages medical intervention. Today, you're choosing an empowered path where you get to take control of your journey and feel confident in the choices you're making for your birth. This episode's takeaway is about you taking all of the steps needed to increase your chances of having the birth that you want. A little bit about my story and what brought me here today talking with you about unmedicated birth. I've had two unmedicated births, one in a hospital, one in a birth center, one with surrender, one without surrender, one with birth disappointment, one empowered. I've been under OB care and midwifery care. And even though I would choose unmedicated for myself 1,000 times over, I'm truly here to break down the steps needed to bring this to life if this is what you desire, because you deserve support and education and encouragement regardless of your birthing decisions. Here's what I feel is not working, has not been working with the intention of, I think I want to give birth unmedicated. Many women, to no fault of our own, who want an unmedicated birth are approaching it without a clear plan, kind of simply hoping or wishing that it's going to happen. But as a result of that, you may find yourself feeling overwhelmed and undersupported, unprepared, or even disappointed. Because while choosing medicated or unmedicated should be completely accepted, right? That decision either way, often the unmedicated choice is met with more resistance, especially if you're planning to deliver in a hospital. So this kind of idea that we're hoping we're tough enough, we're like wishing that labor goes our way, we're wanting unmedicated, but we're not really sure how to prepare. And that's why you're here today. That's why I talk about this so much, is that is not a recipe for fulfilling that desire that you have. Like if you are wanting that experience for your birth, we have to prep for it. So today we're going to dive into the 6 must-know steps when planning for your unmedicated birth. Let's go through this list. Number 1, your pregnancy mindset work. Birth is way more mental than it is physical. So when we think about planning for birth, and especially an unmedicated birth, you really want to look at this emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically, tactically, all of these things. Like we have to put energy and focus and preparation into 1, your pregnancy mindset work. Number 2 is going to be building an aligned care team. Aligned is keyword there. Number 3 is creating your birth plan, which I have another episode about that. Make sure you check that out. Number 4 is pain management options. Like I said, we're not going into birth hoping and wishing that we're tough enough. You actually want to understand your pain management options and prepare your mind and your body. Number 4 is choosing your birth location, also aligned with your birth desire. And number 5 is learning about advocacy, learning how to self-advocate, and understanding your rights. So let's zoom out a little bit, because there is also this belief that birth is just something that happens, right? And this is influenced by cultural narratives that, ultimately portray birth as this inherently unpredictable event that requires medical intervention. You can't plan for it. You can't control it. False. And there's a long history of how we kind of came to this place. And look, we are so lucky to have access to medical care, not only in pregnancy, but in labor and delivery. But at its core, birth itself is not a medical event. There may be medical needs, and like I said, we're thankful that we have access to that, but inherently it's natural. There's also this widespread belief that choosing an unmedicated birth is either unrealistic or you may somehow be crazy for choosing that, or it's just too difficult. Like, why would you make that decision? I will never forget, I had a good friend say to me when, you start sharing, like, oh, what do you think you're going to do for birth? I was like, I think I'm going to go unmedicated. And she was like, you're an idiot. She was like, that there's these things called epidurals, right? And I remember thinking to myself, 1, rude. 2, I'm like, haven't women been giving birth unmedicated for like thousands of years? In my mind, I didn't realize that I was going to be met with resistance, or this was going to be like an odd choice. I always thought, okay, well, you're either probably planning for or would like a medicated birth, or you would like an unmedicated birth. But I didn't realize the type of shock and confusion that I would be met with when I started sharing that I was wanting an unmedicated birth. And you'll hear me say this often, that we all have conscious and subconscious beliefs about birth that we have to dive into. And this belief often stems from like societal conditioning or fear-based media portrayals of birth and the lack of sharing of positive birth stories. Anytime I come across positive birth stories online, I'm always like, this is so refreshing. We need more of that. There is, in addition to kind of like how these things have come to be, there is a lot of fear-based decision-making, fear-based portrayals when it comes to birth. And that infiltrates, like that ultimately becomes a part of our belief systems. And we just have to peel back the layers to that onion. Dive into my pregnancy mindset work episode, because that is really going to help you get to those layers and understand, like, where am I making decisions out of fear-based? But this exists a lot when we think about planning for an unmedicated birth, because it's fear of the unknown. It is fear of pain. And it's understandable, like we've never given birth before. We don't know what that, I felt the same. Like we don't know what we're heading into, and that can create a lot of fears and worries. There is a deep-seated fear of pain. And look, I've had 2 unmedicated births. I get it. It's understandable, but there is just a lack of empowering education around your unmedicated birth options as you prepare. Because as you educate and you understand what that's going to look like, then that's where we can start to feel more confident and shift out of the fear-based decisions as we're planning for an unmedicated birth. So what does this mean? Like ultimately, if you choose to just kind of go into birth hoping and wishing that you're going to get the unmedicated birth that you want, like too many women end up feeling like they didn't have the birth experience that they wanted. So there's one piece of advocacy and your rights and understanding birth. And then there's the other piece of your mindset work and your planning around that. Because again, while we're not trying to control birth, you do have to take steps to make this work. So if you choose not, one, you have your baby, your pregnancy, your birth, your choices, but there's a bigger impact here. And birth, I say this a lot, that your birth stays with you. Like it doesn't leave us. So let's just do all the things that we can to increase those chances that it's going to happen, because it's not just about that day, labor, birth, the day that your baby is born. This also, like this decision and this preparation can also affect your postpartum journey and your confidence as a new mom. No matter your birth experience, mama, it's going to stay with you. So your birth matters. We're going to prep like it. And there's no right or wrong way choosing medicated or unmedicated, as we know. But what's more important for me to share with you in this journey of confidence in pregnancy and your birth preparation is that decision is self-aligned for you. It's what you want. And there's a better way. There's a better way. This is proven, by the way, this is a proven method. Let's go into these 6 steps. You are going to focus on your pregnancy and your birth mindset, and you're going to do the work. Like I have homework for you. Additionally, I just did an unmedicated birth breakthrough class, a live class, and the replay is now available for download. And this class is over an hour where I'm really going into all of these topics in more detail. So if you need support with that, I recommend grabbing that class. But let's talk about the highlights around pregnancy and birth mindset. We know that pregnancy is a vulnerable experience and it brings up fears and worries and stresses. But if we are not going within to understand those fears, right? Some of them are our own and they're legitimate. Some we've adopted, right, from other people. We hear a story and like, oh, that creates fear for us. But ultimately, I want you to know that your job in pregnancy is not to try to mind over matter your fears. You will hear me talk about on social media doing birth affirmations and really stepping into the energy of those positive statements. But you could say positive statements all day long. If you're not getting to the root of your fears and you're not peeling that back and understanding and feeling what you need to feel and then choosing anew, right? Making self-aligned decisions, it's still going to be controlling you. And what happens when we don't put focus on our pregnancy and our birth mindset is we end up making fear-based decisions instead of self-aligned decisions. And here's an example of this is when I was in my first pregnancy, I wanted, right, intuitively, I wanted an unmedicated birthing experience. But once I started peeling that back a little bit, I actually was more afraid of the epidural than I was going unmedicated and the pain. And I ultimately did plan for an unmedicated birth, but I had to get real with myself about that. Like, why am I so scared about the epidural? Oh, needles, okay, sure, fine, whatever. But not until I educated myself on the epidural the pros, the cons, the benefits, the risks, what the procedure even is, what those options are, did I actually feel a little bit more calm that I was like, oh, okay, actually, I can see now that this actually just isn't the route that I want to take. I would like to pursue an unmedicated birth. So I was able to shift out of that fear into more confidence simply by educating myself. And that's how I want you to think about these things. As fears come up for you, and as you're asking yourself, how am I feeling in this pregnancy? Like mentally, emotionally, like how am I feeling? That is going to guide you. That just essentially gives us our next steps to what we should be focusing and working on and educating ourselves on. So birth affirmations, journaling, meditation, hypnobirthing, all of these things are really powerful to help you have a healthy pregnancy and birth mindset. Birth is more mental than it is physical, understandably that there is pain. But if we can head into birth with perspective shifts and having that healthy mindset, it's going to largely shape your birthing experience. Number 2, you're going to create a damn birth plan. This is a powerful tool. It's going to help educate you along the way. So I want you to think of creating your birth plan as creating for what you want and educating yourself on what you don't want. Prime example of that is what we just talked about with the epidural. I knew I wanted unmedicated, but I had to educate myself. So misconceptions, I also have a Create Your Birth Plan episode, which dives much deeper into this. But your birth plan is a tool. It's a tool for you, an education tool for you, and a communication tool for you with your care team, making sure that everybody is aligned. And I believe that birth planning should start when you're newly pregnant and not a forceful way that you're missing it in some capacity. Whether you just peed on a stick or your baby's coming soon, like this, creating birth plan is a journey for you, right? It's educating along the way. I don't subscribe to wait until the 3rd trimester and do your birth plan because we just missed out on 2 trimesters of making self-aligned decisions and doing the mindset work and all these things. So just know that it is not just a piece of paper that is given to your team, whether that's birth center or, at the hospital, to be like, hey, here's my wishes. No, I really want that to be a tool that's supporting you throughout your journey. So don't let anybody tell you that you shouldn't create a birth plan, why you can't plan for birth. That's what we're breaking down today. Creating birth plan is for you, okay? So it's really important. Number 3, it's important when we're building our care team and it's aligned. You're choosing a provider that is aligned for you. Now, this decision is usually taken way too lightly. So we're going to think about it as like you're interviewing, right? You want to make sure that you vibe with this person. You feel safe and seen and heard. They answer your questions. Now, whether you are taking the OB route, usually in a prenatal visit with an OB, it's much shorter of a duration. Maybe that's 10 or 15 minutes, just kind of depending on your pregnancy and what's going on. And then let's say you have a midwife, those appointments may be 30, 45, or upwards of an hour. So when we're making self-aligned decisions, you also have to ask, what type of pregnancy experience do I want? And is this aligning with my provider? Is it aligning with my birth choices? In this idea around your care team is not just your provider. It's also your partner. You can also consider bringing a doula onto your team. I ride for doulas. I will also have an upcoming episode about doulas and everything that you need to know about bringing a doula onto your team and the impact that can have for birth, and especially an unmedicated birth. But really, your care team, so think about all of these different roles or people that you choose to bring on, this creates the energy around you throughout pregnancy and birth. And we need a lot of support going into an unmedicated birthing process. So we don't want to take building that care team lightly. Number 4, you're going to understand that you have pain management options. We're not trying to white knuckle it through labor and delivery. It is a terrible idea. It is likely not going to create success for you. You're going to be exhausted and you're probably going to end up taking a medicated route, which also is completely okay if you choose to do that. But ultimately, you got to set yourself up for success, mama. So let's talk about pain management options. Again, in the Unmedicated Birth Breakthrough class, deep dive into each of these, but I want to highlight these so that you can also do some research and be like, what's that? Okay, maybe I want to do that. Number 1 is a TENS unit, TENS unit. Now, if you have a doula, they are probably going to provide this for you. You can also rent them. You can also buy them. So essentially, it has little patches on it, which are placed in your lower back area. So think like your sacrum area. And it sends a electrical vibrational current to your nerves, right? To the muscles in that area. So as you are heading into a contraction, which has a peak of intensity, what it does is helps take the edge off. It helps minimize the peak of that intensity. I could not have given birth unmedicated 2 times, one without my doula, but two, without a TENS unit, and number two, which is coming up, which is hip squeezes. So again, contractions are intense. And as they are getting closer and closer together, you have less time in between, kind of in that rest period. So where you can help to manage that pain in its intensity, the better. Highly, highly recommend exploring and getting a TENS unit. Now, the one that my doula had brought to me is by the brand Lelle. It had a lanyard, so I was actually able to just have it on me. And as a contraction would come, I would hit that surge button. So you can also control it, which is really helpful. Number two, let's dive into hip squeezes. So in the class, I have photos and a visual representation of what this looks like. But essentially, imagine that you're either on your hands or your knees, or you're, have your hands leaning on a table, and your partner, doula, is behind you, and they are putting their hands on the tops of your hips, so your lower back on the sides, and they're pushing down and in. Kind of think about pushing in towards your sacrum area. And this is essentially doing the same thing. When you combine a TENS unit and hip squeezes at the same time in a contraction, it is much easier to get through contractions. So those two are like my top two heavy hitters, like must explore, because ultimately this is what helps you get to the finish line. And that's what we want. We're going to talk about surrender, which is really important. But ultimately, as you're in this process, every surge, every contraction is truly bringing you closer and closer to meeting your baby. So as you can accept into the fact that you're in labor and you're experiencing contractions, ultimately, as you have the pain management to help you get through them with a little bit more ease, it just helps you chug along contraction by contraction until your baby's here. So now let's talk about number three, which is going to be mindset focused. So we're talking hypnobirthing, birth affirmations, and surrender. Surrender is the active state of not resisting. And essentially this means that you are heading into a physical and a mental, emotional acceptance that you are in labor. We think about contractions, right? We head into an unmedicated process like, oh, pain and worry and tension and fear. That is not conducive to the oxytocin that your body needs to really surrender into the process. When we have practiced hypnobirthing, which is a really beautiful practice of understanding the stages of labor and combining that with the breath work, which really helps you feel in tune and connected to your body and your mind and your baby. You've practiced birth affirmations, so you have continued to step into that energy of what you want for your birth, and you're able to surrender in that process, mama. Powerful. We don't want to wait for birth to then practice these things. These are pregnancy practice. I want you studying. I want you really diving into these, because that is the mental and the spiritual and the emotional side of birthing. And hypnobirthing, birth affirmations, and practicing surrender is an incredible shift for you. Then we have number four, which is water and movement. Water is incredibly soothing. Whenever do we get into a bath and we're like, oh, I feel so tense, right? Like water is very naturally soothing and relaxing. Also, another reason I wanted to deliver in water the second time around is I had a minor tear, like less than a 1-degree tear in the hospital, which wasn't terrible, all things considered. But I really wanted the second time around and going unmedicated. I was like, I'd like to increase my chances that I can also, minimize my risk of tearing. And I didn't tear the second time around, which was really incredible because water, obviously, it helps your body to relax and that stretchability. So water, important. Many hospitals will actually allow you, if they have tubs, allow you to labor in water, but probably will not allow you to deliver in water. So these are important questions, like as you're exploring your birth locations and your birthing options, pain management, to explore, do I have the option to be laboring in water? This can also happen at home before you're heading into the hospital in many cases. So water and movement. This, again, let's kind of go back to like cultural beliefs and, movie and media portrayals where you just see a woman on her back, legs up, in pain, tense, like all these things. Movement is so powerful. It is powerful as you're in early labor, active labor, even in different like birthing positions, to really go with like the natural flow of our body and gravity and helping the baby to descend into the pelvis and make their way out. Like movement is so underrated. I just don't even see it enough in any sort of like social media content. Like we need to be talking about this more and more and more, that you do not just have to be in a bed on your back delivering a baby. I actually do not recommend it. And oftentimes that happens. Like even in my first labor and delivery, I was laboring in a tub at the hospital and I was like, this baby is coming. And I kind of beelined it to the bed and ended up in a kind of laying down position. So in hindsight, I wish I had made another choice, due to tearing and all those sorts of things. But movement is really important. And this is movement within, just the physical nature of being in labor. And this is also movement into different positions as you're in labor. So water, movement, is so important. And then number 5, which is going to be nitrous oxide. So when we're talking TENS unit, hip squeezes, hypnobirthing, birth affirmations, water, and movement, you can do all of these things in a hospital. You can do them at home. You can do that, meaning like a home birth. You can do them in a birth center. Like there's no restrictions around that. When we kind of remove these additional options that you would be choosing, you would be educating yourself, you would be bringing into the hospital. A pain management option that is not an epidural could also be nitrous oxide, which is laughing gas. This is my honest opinion about nitrous oxide, which I did use the first time around. One, it is nice that you control it. You're not on a drip or an IV. Like you have a mask and you're essentially going to inhale it as you need it, kind of taking the mask on and off. I did not feel that nitrous oxide minimized or managed my physical pain that you're feeling with contractions. I did, though, feel that it kind of does a good job from a mental perspective to just kind of ease things, like smooth things out a little bit. Like, okay, imagine if you're just like, oh, okay, like, all right. And that's where I feel like, okay, it is helpful. Sometimes if we just need to kind of get out of our head a little bit, like recenter, focus, surrender back into labor, that it can be a helpful option in the hospital if that's what you choose. Pain management options, we're talking about TENS unit, hip squeezes, hypnobirthing and birth affirmation. So essentially your mindset pieces, water, movement, and hospital. So those are 5 pain management options to explore, educate, and consider, and I do highly recommend. Number 5 in our 6 steps here is you're going to learn your rights, pregnancy and birthing. And also I touch on this in the Unmedicated Birth Breakthrough. I also have the Confident Pregnancy Method, which is an online birth preparation class. And I have an entire video about your rights and advocacy if you want to explore that deeper. But essentially, what I want to share with you today is this is your show. You are the star of the show, mama. You have the rights. Like your care team is there for you. And we just can't forget this. I think far too often we're like, okay, well, they're the medical expert. Please do not forget also, in addition to that, into their medical expertise, that you are the expert of your body. And this is your pregnancy and your baby. So an example of this is you literally have the right to say no to anything in your pregnancy, labor, and delivery. This does not mean that you should be, but I want you to have that perspective shift that you have that control. So examples of this are around autonomy, your support, the right to informed consent, being educated, being respected. And an example of this is in my first labor and delivery, I chose to do 1 cervical check, mostly because my labor was progressing quickly, and that was the timing. By the time I got to the hospital and had a baby, there was opportunity for a cervical check, and I did take it. Now, the information that was presented to me at the time wasn't super helpful, and I was able to kind of powwow with my doula about it to make a decision that I wanted to continue on unmedicated. My son was born about 45 minutes later. But in an unmedicated birth, you don't have to do cervical checks. It's not a requirement, even if delivering in a hospital. But you may be met with resistance on that, right? Because unmedicated in a hospital is not the norm. So things like being induced, getting a membrane sweep, cervical check, any sort of medical intervention, just know that if you are choosing any of that whoever is presenting that to you, right, your provider, should be providing you with options. It should be a conversation, ask your questions, and just make sure that you have rights throughout your journey. And unfortunately, I see the floods of comments many times when I'm doing content like this about women who were not respected, and women who wish that they knew their rights, and women that wish that there was different decisions that were made. So I truly believe that, especially as first-time moms, you deserve to get it right the first time. You deserve to go into your birth, an unmedicated birth, and be prepared with your advocacy for yourself, your partner advocating on your behalf, and understanding your rights so that you can have more of an empowered experience. We shouldn't have to go through birth disappointment and trauma to then realize that we should have educated ourselves differently. Number 6, this is kind of segues into if you're delivering in a hospital, just understand and learn about the hospital system. I do touch on this in the Unmedicated Birth Breakthrough and dive into it in the Confident Pregnancy Method, but you just want to know what you're walking into, right? You're walking into a medical facility. Hospital policy does not mean law, okay? This is really important and kind of going back to your rights. So when you're stepping into that and you're choosing to go unmedicated in hospital, which look, majority of women are going to deliver in a hospital. So that's why I think it's so important that if that's the common route and unmedicated is uncommon, let's just bring those two worlds together. You're doing your prep and education for your unmedicated birth, and you're going to educate yourself on the hospital system and your rights so that you are ready. You're ready to step into that system, and there's no surprises. because the surprises and the assumption, I assumed certain things about my first labor and delivery, and then I was disappointed when I wasn't met with the respect and the care and those sorts of things. So I would have done things differently. And that is a part of my journey of why we're here today and talking about this, because it is so like you deserve to have a beautiful and a positive and healthy birth experience. But if we're assuming and we're not educated, we're not taking control of our journey, then we're decreasing our chances of having that. So everything that we've talked about today, this approach prioritizes your individual preferences, supporting you with that education and care and self-advocacy, all those techniques. So rather than focusing on the interventions, which I want you to educate yourself on, this is going to prepare you for an aligned birthing experience. This is proven, Mama. This proven approach is here to create the birth experience that's fulfilling for you, helping you to overcome those fears and step into your inner confidence and really contribute to a strong integration and a start to motherhood. The unmedicated birthing experiences that I feel so blessed to have had were not by chance. And I think that that's really important. Obviously, if you've tuned in this far, you're understanding that this is really about taking steps. But they were magical experiences. And I wish that birth can be a really beautiful experience. And I really wish that for every mom, no matter what your birthing choices are, is just to really feel confident in that. Because they say, right, when a child is born, a mother is born. And that happens every time, every baby I've gone through a rebirth. But that birthing process for me both times gave me a sense of inner strength. I feel like I'm going to cry. Gave me a sense of inner strength and confidence. It's like it's just a whole new version of you and a new level of confidence. And it's incredible. It's almost euphoric in a way. And I feel like both times it kind of catapulted me differently into my motherhood journey. So I just truly wish that for you. Thank you for hanging with me in this episode and diving into these really important topics. And until the next episode, lots of love. Whether you're a tired mom struggling with your little one's sleep or an expecting mom looking for empowerment and advocacy as you prepare for birth, I'm here to show up for you with proven strategies and education to elevate your journey. You deserve to feel heard and given the tools to have success. Mama, you do not have to navigate your pregnancy or sleep struggles alone. Head over to empoweredwithann.com to discover how we can support you. Confidence, empowerment, and peace are just a click away.